Hey guys, get a drink here real quick. So following up on kind of intros or stuff for classes, the next one is the NRA basic pistol class. So I run these. I've run a couple this past year. I'd like to continue and build because unfortunately I've been able to run them, but the 3 classes I've run, I've had 1 student per class, and it's great to have that one-on-one, but I'd like to, 3, 4, 5, 6, have some. It makes the time go by faster. Or not faster, but it makes it worthwhile for everybody. Especially me as an instructor, giving my time to teach, I'd prefer to teach a couple people. But the overview of the class, so it's supposed to be an 8-hour class. It is especially in New York, it is a class for folks that want a live fire class that are new to, you preferably new, but you can do it experienced as well and take it to brush up on stuff or whatever. But for the most part, it is for when you go out, you take your state class, you get your permit, you bought a pistol. Okay, now you want to understand the fundamentals of how to shoot, how to do it safely, how to clean your weapon. That stuff. We go through a lot of the basics, so safety, a lot of stuff, especially in the New York class to get your permit, very redundant. If you've been doing it for a few years, it's very redundant. However, I have been able to teach some experienced folks new things, especially when it comes to maybe a newer stance, a newer grip, just newer stuff that we're teaching in the industry, or transitioning to a dot, which this class technically focuses on irons. And my argument is, although that is where the trend is going, all these guns are going to have dots on them. End of the day, when that dot fails, or if it fails, you need to be good with iron sights. So, in the basis for marksmanship, whether it's with a rifle or with a pistol, is I still have to have my fundamentals to transition from irons to a dot, or from a dot to irons, and I need to be good with irons. So in the class we will go over iron sights, and if you have a dot, we'll go over dot as well. But you need the fundamentals of irons at the end of the day. So we'll go over stance, we'll go over grip, we'll go over trigger press, breath control. I tend to argue breath control is not as high on the list of necessities versus a rifle, but depending on the shot you are taking, holding your breath for a couple seconds may be required or advantageous. But we'll go through fundamentals, we'll go through the test, we'll go through legalities and the local law. We'll have a lot of good discussion of, and that's why I like to have a couple people in the class. It opens up the floor for discussion, for questions, for me to feed off other people, and for you guys to feed off of my experience. Because I've had people in class that, 2 of my students were either current or retired law enforcement of 15, 20, 30 years. So I learned things too, which is nice. And like a couple of the students I've had who, like one was a retired trooper. He's been shooting a gun a certain way for 30 years. I told him, I go, look, I am not going to, we're going to go through the class, we're going to teach it the way it's supposed to be taught. But, I go, at the end of the day, if you can prove to me that you can hit the target, I'm not going to sit there as you're firing and critique every little thing you're doing. If you're taking shots at your target and they're hitting where they're supposed to hit, who am I to tell you otherwise? If it's what you're comfortable with and you're accurate with it and you can call your shots, I got nothing. So, it's a great class for a beginner, and that's what it's designed for. It's the beginner class to get used to. Because when I went through it, not putting down these folks, but I went through it with a couple of people when they were taking just the class. I was taking the class plus the instructor half of it, but we had 2 students in my class who could not pass the first round of fire because for their stature, for their application of it, the firearm that they had chosen, to me, probably was too small of a gun, and they did not have the strength in their wrists to mitigate the recoil, so they could not hit the target. Part of that class also teaches you how to pick a gun, which arguably needs to be part of the state class to get your permit. If certain people aren't teaching it already, it needs to be part of it, okay? There is no one size fits all when it comes to a pistol or to a rifle or whatever. Even though I am a smaller statured person, I'm 5'7", 140, 150 pounds. Small hands, smaller hands. I don't like small guns. I don't like pocket pistols. Is there a time and a place for them? Sure. But for me to be comfortable carrying that gun, be accurate with that gun at defensive range or farther, I like a mid-sized gun, Glock 19 or my Echelon. That's my preference for like a concealed carry gun. Because when you start getting smaller, and a lot of women feel this as well, they think, okay, I'm smaller, I need a small gun. No, you don't. The smaller the gun, the harder it is to control, the harder it is to maintain those fundamentals, especially at distance. They're a great point shooter, when you're sub 10 feet, they're a good point shooter. But when you go outside of that and you start doing a two-handed grip on it, you start looking for those very tiny little iron sights on most of those pocket pistols, it shows on paper. They're not very accurate. And I'll change that statement to the gun is probably more accurate than the shooter. And 99.99999% of the time, any gun, as long as it's halfway decently made, is going to be more accurate than the person firing the gun. Okay, if I take my Glock that I can usually keep, a good group at 7 yards, and I put that into a vise at 7 yards, and I have a consistent trigger pull, that gun is going to be putting holes in holes. Because it's not moving, it's in a vise. The gun is inherently more accurate than me. When we add me to it, I have some motion. I have some, I call it floating, but the body's natural sway. When you add components to it, you're going to add variables for failure or for deviance to it. But for that class, if you want to take it, 8-hour class, I want to keep it at that 6 people cap kind of thing, especially if we're doing it on my land. It's $130. It's 8 hours. I do have to buy some of your materials up front, so there's an upfront cost for me. But it's also me making a little bit off of it, and insurance, fuel if we go to a range, rental if we go to a range, or if we have to go to a range, or on my land. It's for me to have to clean up some stuff, and targets and target stands and stuff. So yes, if you're interested in that in your local, phone, email, the website, Facebook. Visit the Facebook or the website. You can get my email and my number off that as well. So keep training, stay safe. Hope you're doing well.